very alert. When danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He'd duck and cover, duck and cover. He did what we all must learn to do. You and you and you and you. Duck and cover.
A hip, a hop, a hip, I dip my dick in the salsa dip on a Taco Tuesday.
Yes. Welcome everybody to another live stream here on the Ronstryker channel. And yeah, I didn't have time to do actual work on openings and stuff, but anyways, this is what you see here is what I wanted in my thumbnail for the opener, but oh well. Let's see, remove. There it is. So for those not really familiar, our guest tonight is Bucky, aka Glow So Bright. And dude, you gave us a heaping download on leftist / communist organizations that basically are, would say, threats. Hang on, security. Let me mute your mic real quick. Okay, sorry. You there?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, for the past month or so, I was on the focus strip streams, mainly trying to explain about or meme on these Marxist groups that pop up, the SRA, or even interviewing a couple of SRA members, which apparently they were the wrong flavor of communism and got kicked out of their own organization.
Hence, they eat their own.
But with many of these things, are trying to make maybe not necessarily political videos, but a response to something going on in the gun sphere, where in my own lane, I'd be what you consider gun tubers, not militia channels, not preparation, even though there are a few elements of field craft here and there, but a lot of it is more focused on firearms and equipment. But now instead, but for a shift of pace, we're looking into organizations, their tactics, who they are, basic information, as well as what they do and what they use. And I'll go over many of these Marxist groups which are operating in the United States. Some of them have a national main chapter with subservient local chapters. Some of them are splinters and offshoots of these groups due to getting kicked out or having some sort of problem with the central group, and miscellaneous individuals and groups to focus on this.
Okay, so you ready for, hang on, let me unmute security guy. Okay, security guy, you want to add something before we get into the deep dive?
Not too much. I'm curious to hear what all Bucky has been able to dig up, because a lot of these groups are pretty secretive and they lie like a motherfucker. Tell you they're not political, they're not revolutionary, they're not a militia, not a terrorist group, but I don't know, you actually see what they do in their own videos. Says otherwise.
Yeah, to me it sounds like they are classic authoritarian in the way they operate. Their main, I wouldn't say operate, but the way they handle themselves and their goals outright. They want the ones to be the ones in charge, putting their boot on somebody else's neck. That's how I take it. And to anybody, I'm more of the prepper mindset. Security guy, you're more the militia background, and Bucky, you even said you're the gun tuber. So we got three different areas to look at, and I consider these guys to be a threat to anybody, not just right-wing conservative, but even to their own. These jokers are a threat. Your thoughts, Bucky?
Yes, I totally agree with that. The thing is that the Marxist groups are not unique to the United States. For example, in the 1970s, you have the Weather Underground groups and stuff, which have caused problems like bombings and stuff like that within America's borders. However, right now, these sorts of groups have been proliferating since the 2010s, with the advent of social media, the internet, facilitating spread of information, recruitment, media presence, that sort of stuff. And this is especially true ever since the first inauguration of Donald Trump back in 2016. And with him in his second term of presidency, these groups are starting to flare up even more.
So, all right, whenever you're ready, Bucky, I'll bring you center stage, and just let me know when, like, if I'm missing something, make sure you see your screen, and if you that information you want on screen, just let me know. All right.
Okay. Ron, could you pull up the website for Redneck Revolt?
Like that?
Yes, perfect. So right now, let's go and focus on national groups of local chapters. Many of these Marxist groups would have a national level organization with local channels underneath it. For example, we have the John Brown Gun Club, and then below that you have the Madison, Wisconsin John Brown Gun Club. You have the Socialist Rifle Association. Below that, you have the LASRA. Now, Redneck Revolt was a political Marxist organization that has a national organization with local chapters and are parallel with the promotion of the John Brown Gun Club. The John Brown Gun Club would be focused on firearms as a core focus of their organization, while Redneck Revolt would focus on the political side of it. Two sides of the exact same coin. With Redneck Revolt, they would have a hillbilly motif to attract rural Americans for their own political and community influence and support. The organization was formed in 2016, with some sources claiming back in 2019, over in Kansas by some named members. One named Connor, and third with the first and last name identified as Dave Strano. Strano was, before Redneck Revolt, involved in the Denver Antifa chapter, as well as the Denver Police Watch movement. They claim that they're anti-racist, which means that they either clash with the local or white loathing in general. Anti-fascist, which means they either go against white supremacist groups with tiki torches and Charlottesville rally in 2016, or the general conservative American, like the average person in the GOP. And they would put huge emphasis on LGBT identity and a focus on attracting that sort of stuff. Otherwise, the same sort of Marxist record going against capitalism like any other Marxist political group. However, that group fell apart in 2018 or has severely been fractured due to frequent complaints and documentation of one of the founders, Dave Strano, sexually assaulting several female members within the John Brown Gun Club and Redneck Revolt for using his position of power, authority, and power for power harassment.
Those guys pictured here, is that one of the guys that you were referring to?
No, Strano himself. Darn, I forgot to have an image. Like there was a pic. I can go and send it to you just because it's relevant for the next topic of the John Brown Gun Club.
Okay, yeah, please do.
But there have been several reports on the SRA subreddit. There was a dedicated blog documenting on his alleged actions against women, and with that, the John Brown Gun Club, or the majority of it, fractured and fell apart, with Strano ended up splintering off into his own group. Well, while we're on the subject of the John Brown Gun Club, they are the armed wing parallel to Redneck Revolt, and their own motif is that of idealizing John Brown, John Brown is a 19th century abolitionist and leader for skirmishes in Kansas during the mid-19th century, and was known for to seize a federal armory in Harpers Ferry, Virginia, to obtain weapons for a nationwide slave revolt. Doing so with Christian morals, and that is his justification. But later on, USMC responded with superior firepower and artillery. John Brown and his particular group surrendered, and then later he was executed by hanging under charges of treason and murder. But what's interesting is that even though John Brown is Christian, they would often reject religion. Even they would reject religion. But with the John Brown Gun Club, what they would do is show up armed to, like, say, protests, counter-protests, rallies. They'd claim to do stuff like provide armed presence and, say, gay drag readings for children, anti-Trump protests, that sort of stuff, having a significant presence in Chaz or Chop in Seattle during the Summer of Love in 2020. And right now they still exist. There's still several chapters out there. If you look at the Twitter post around like link number 6 of this particular individual who is seen in the
This
Madison.
one?
No, it would be like an X post. So it'd be like 2 on the. So it'd be like the X post.
Hang on.
That one. This particular individual who was featured in a either Spanish or Catalanian documentary on various factions preparing for an upcoming civil war in America. This particular example is a pretty notorious within the Madison, Wisconsin John Brown Gun Club chapter.
So
now with those 2 groups so far, do you have any questions about either of them?
no, not yet. I have heard of the John Brown Club back in 2020, and I thought, okay, this must be the armed right wing of the of Antifa, but apparently it's gotten much broader since then.
Yeah, and then this YouTube video, I suggest you mute it while I talk over it.
This one?
Yes, and just mute it.
Okay.
Before we get into the video, I want to point out, for those that are not aware of it, Andy No, a reporter out in Oregon, he watches over all these groups very closely. And he says the groups are very incestuous. You will see members jump back and forth between groups all the time. So you can have one individual, he's a member of Antifa, he's in the John Brown Gun Club, he's in BLM, he's in Socialist Rifle Association, all these different organizations, and he does the exact same thing regardless of event. The only thing he does is change his hat depending on who's in charge of that event. So the numbers of the organizations may not be all that correct, and you will notice a lot of the same people in the different groups.
Okay. Well, we can just have this play in like the background while I explain the SRA. Just because it's muted, we can just use it as a visual background.
Yep.
So this SRA, the Socialist Rifle Association, was created in the mid-2010s over in Kansas as a leftist firearms collective with a national organization with local chapters below that. And
hold on, Bucky. Now I'm showing the John Brown Club. Is this the video you're looking at?
Yes. I mean, like a lot of these groups would have the same sort of symbology, weapons, arms, resources. So
okay,
same people.
Okay, all right.
And with that, like the name started off originally as a pun on the National Rifle Association, the NRA, so they call it the SRA. But then it first became a registered nonprofit entity in New Mexico in 2018. And most of the political structure and motif of the SRA is general Marxist and leftist ideologies, like labeling people that are not them Nazis or fascists or crypto-fascists, huge emphasis on the LGBT, transgender identity, hating capitalism, hating Trump, the same sort of spiel. The SRA, in their own methods, would not openly show up to protests armed, unlike the John Brown Gun Club. And with both of them being leftist gun groups, there's a misconception that the two organizations are one and the same. They're separate organizations, even if they have overlap with individual members. But they also claim to not be a militia, but there are several utterances of doing action, of course, against the Nazis or the fascists or the crypto-Nazis to rally around for an armed political collective that would actually take offensive action.
So what's a crypto-Nazi? That's something new to me.
I originally thought it was someone like a Nazi who thinks like the dollar is some sort of Zionist conspiracy or something like that. But no, it's actually anyone who is not them. So are you an American conservative and part of the GOP? You're a crypto-Nazi. Do you think that men cannot be women? You're a crypto-Nazi. That sort of stuff. Or if you support the Constitution of the United States, you're a crypto-Nazi because it's supporting a fascist institute.
My God.
However, within the SRA, what particular flavor of leftism is allowed or political views is varied and always in flux, and I can't pin it down and keep on changing. And oftentimes individual chapters would be disavowed from the national organization, have a lot of political infighting among different chapters or media representatives. And this would lead to individuals or even chapters themselves being ejected from the main entity for either not being radical enough or being too radical. One example of an organization that was kicked for being apparently too radical was the Miami SRA, which they would turn themselves into the Red Rifle Collective, where apparently the Red Rifle Collective was formed because the main organization was withholding resources even though they paid their dues. Well, the central organization and other chapters would accuse them of being hijacked by the American Communist Party.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's pause this for a second. You have a bunch of yahoos like Red Rifle Association. They're communist, but yet they are they are fighting against the American Communist Association, or
no, like the SRA was like apparently a different communist organization, the American Communist Party.
Communist Party. Okay,
is against the SRA, and they would have two conflicting views on what is the right flavor of communism. You know, the right answer is socialist ideals led by the Communist Party of China, which that's the obviously right answer. But
okay,
Holy hell! It reminds me so much of when we would get briefings about the different groups in Iraq. They would splinter all the time, and you'd have new offshoots that are supposedly separate organizations, but they're just a branch, and it's the same crap.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right before, like an hour before the show here, I pulled up a copy of the Communist Manifesto, and I'm skimming through it, and it's just like Marx was talking about, oh, we'll accept some forms of socialism, but they got to adhere to our form of socialism, i.e. communism. And it's just like, oh, dude, because, I mean, after Bucky, when you get done, I'm going to bring up the Communist Manifesto. And there's some key points that I want to bring up to folks who haven't read the Communist Manifesto. Yeah, it's a bunch of trite bullshit. So
before you get to that, if you pull up the image, it was in the notes about the tweets by the Minnesota SRA. I think that might be
what number was that?
It wasn't a number; it was like the main body of the note. So,
hang on.
I'm not sure how to implement that.
Okay,
and I don't have
Redneck Revolt, John Brown Gun Club.
Something I find interesting is, why is most of the more extremist shit out of Minnesota? Because he had that in militias also, where you had supposedly, oh, this cell of this militia is threatening Muslims and is going to attack a mosque. And it's always in Minnesota. I grew up there. I don't understand why this keeps happening.
That's all right. So, hang on, I'll just have to bring up the PDF you.
Wait, actually, I think I can just directly copy it from my computer and just send it to you.
Let's see. Hang on.
Okay, it's uploading to Telegram right now.
Okay. Yep, got it. Let's see, save. Hang on. Let me put it in a spot where I can find it. 1 second. Livestream media. Okay. Copy. Alrighty. Give me a second. I am slow at this.
For those of you out in TV land, Bucky wrote up a large report and sent it to me and Ron has pretty much all the links from that report that he has to go through for pointing this stuff out as Bucky goes through it. So
there we go. Is that it?
Yes, that is exactly it. So one of the things that caused a some friction between national and one of the local chapters was a tweet about the Second Amendment by the Minnesota SRA, where basically this whole like bunch of crap that basically disregards the entire idea of liberalism, like classical liberalism under John Locke. People have inherent rights because they can use logic, that sort of stuff. People have natural rights, therefore they have the necessity to have the right to defend themselves, that sort of stuff. And this really shows that they just want to disarm anyone that isn't them and destroy them.
Well, let's see. Can I take this down now, or
Go ahead.
okay? All right.
And the response by National is incredibly milquetoast and lukewarm. They haven't, like, as far as I'm aware, not been able to do anything about it too much, except for like say, hey, don't do that.
Lovely.
And then, like, when individual members inside that chapter brought it out as a concern, they were kicked from the chapter.
Gotcha.
Other things going on is that, like, looking at the subreddit, local complaints of individuals trying to sign up for local chapters, they paid their dues and then they just take the money and not process them, which is funny.
Okay, hang on. Nope, that's not it.
That's about the Red Rifle Collective. That one go a little bit left on that. Oh, this, okay. Yeah, this is, yeah. So someone posted, so like the subreddit is not officially run by the SRA, but shares many of the members and common viewpoints. And if you say the wrong thing, you'll get banned or kicked from the subreddit. So,
yeah. Okay.
And this is a testimony from a former member of the Minnesota chapter where they called out that tweet in question and then got kicked from the organization.
Hence, they eat their own.
Which is contrary than how they try to portray themselves to us all the time.
Right, because they try and claim themselves to be inclusive, but then if you're the wrong flavor of whatever it is, and you'll get thrown out. And this is some question brought up, like in a focus strip stream of, hey, can a general American conservative be part of the group if they claim that it's not political? And the answer is unclear. I couldn't get like a comprehensive answer.
Oh, that was painful on Focus's live stream. I could only stick around for an hour of that, and yeah, no, it's just.
Speaking of kicking members, the Los Angeles chapter, I think, kicked out a member for being Jewish or thinking that, hey, the state of Palestine should exist alongside with the state of Israel as two sovereign entities and have them be tolerant of each other.
Yeah, there was LA chapter. I heard about that a few weeks ago.
And they ended up expelling the Jews. So they don't seem to adhere just to Marxist socialism, but other flavors of socialism as well.
I saw that. Where is that?
There it is.
There
and then
it
if you
is.
Scroll down on the tweet, you'll find the screen cap of the Reddit post. Essentially, like where a member who is a leftist, has like Israeli relatives and wants a like two sovereign states in the Palestine-Israel area. But you wonder what sort of organization, like about 100 years ago, also took action to expel the Jews from their own area.
Yeah, but supposedly they're different. One calls himself democratic and the other calls itself nationalist.
Yeah.
There's reasons why I say I don't like socialists of any flavor.
Yeah.
There's no difference between the fucking two. There really isn't.
Okay.
Let's go shift over to another one of these groups where there's a national organization with like now I keep saying darn it.
Stop doing that.
With local chapters, you have Antifa. While Antifa has been around since, as far as I'm aware, since Germany in the 1930s as Antifaschist Action. I've not tried to say that in German. I'm butchering that. Where they would end up fighting against both National Socialist groups and other various political groups trying to take hold or exist in the chaos of Weimar. Later on, but they do not have firearms as their core identity. One thing that is of interest is that in autumn of 2020, a member of Rose City Antifa out in Oregon, an individual named Michael Ronstryker shot Aaron Danielson, who was a participant in a Trump convoy. And then after Danielson was shot to death, before Danielson was shot to death, Ronstryker was interviewed by Vice.
This guy.
Yeah, this man, yes. Which led to a manhunt by the U.S. Marshals, where then Ronstryker opened fire on the Marshals. The Marshals responded back, opened fire, and killed him. However, to get into Antifa, I'm not going to go do that. That's beyond my own scope and my own area of research. Andy No is a subject matter expert on that.
And he's written a book about it too. I suggest if you want to find out about Antifa, get a hold of his book.
Now let's look over in these splinter groups, because a lot of times, like, there would be a huge amount of arguing and stuff over like who is the leader, having disagreements with leaders, being not radical enough or too radical, or misconduct by key personnel of a chapter or even national organization. So due to this, it would end up creating splinter groups, one of which would be the Red Rifle Collective, which I already talked about already.
This Land and Liberty?
Land and Liberty is an offshoot of the Phoenix John Brown Gun Club.
Okay.
Forming around 2021 and still active as far as mid to late or autumn of 2024, where they're posturing themselves as a militia to counter anti-illegal immigration militias operating over in Arizona. Land and Liberty was formed by Dave Strano after numerous allegations of sexual assault and also mismanagement and control over funds in the Redneck Revolt or John Brown Gun Club organization. They are a platoon between the size of a section and a platoon, approximately 15 to 30 individuals. This particular member who promotes the organization on Reddit is shockingly and disturbingly a manager over at a Raising Cane's fast food chicken joint. So anyone who is over in the Phoenix, Arizona area, don't go to any of the franchises over there just to not have your coleslaw be fucked with a different special sauce and mayonnaise.
Mm-hmm.
But for this particular organization, they are armed with AR-15 rifles and Kalashnikov pattern rifles. They also wear multicam as their operational camouflage pattern, with Marxist patches such as the Black Power Fist and the anarcho-communist flag, the black flag with the red diagonal element as their identification of friend or foe patches. And a majority of them would have plate carriers, but you see some of them have, due to lack of self-funding or so, like just a cross-draw airsoft vest or something. And the group commander, as far as I'm aware, is Dave Strano himself.
Okay. What's this Thunder
Yes.
Liger?
Yeah, so just look at, if you just scroll down and post, so if you go below overview.
Let me zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, if you go into overview, then scroll up a little bit.
And
you see like these two boxes, and then change that to list to make it easier to read through and quickly. Yeah, compact. View as compact.
Sort by compact. Okay.
And then just scroll down until you see actually on second thought, probably not, because it might cause problems for the stream in your account on YouTube. Let's move on to the next subject then.
Well,
you'd be like trying to be like in the trying to ask questions in the Phoenix subreddit swingers group and stuff like that, and all sorts of weird stuff, and apparently having some sort of involvement with the American Iron Front. Let's go talk about the American Iron Front. This is the Instagram page for Land Liberty, and you can get a few pictures on what sort of size they are, what sort of different people they are, and I'd guess in their element between 15 and 30 individuals.
Come on.
Let's move on to the American Iron Front.
Hang
The
on,
Willie McKinley
Is this it? Yeah.
Yes. So the website is now working good. The Willie McKinley Institute, which is an organization that tracks on institutional anti-white racism in, say, universities and other major institutes and organizations, did a good report on the American Iron Front, which is based in Georgia from Antifa members of that particular chapter and organization, where they try and have the same sort of aesthetics and motifs as that of, these Fed-infiltrated American nationalist groups like the Patriot Front. But then with these like shallow motifs of like the red, white, and blue and the American flag and eagles and stuff like that, it would be just the same Marxist nonsense.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's more or less about them. Now, besides these sorts of groups that are both national groups with local chapters as well as splinter organizations, there are some groups that I put into miscellaneous and separate categories that share the same sort of core ideology of Marxism, or if you try and insult Marxism or socialism or these previous organizations like the SRA, they would get really butthurt. This one is Doll Squad. Doll Squad is a platoon-sized...
Okay, here it is. Go ahead. I was trying to pull it up. It's on
Doll Squad. So if you're curious, 161, because people ask me all this all the time, 161 is just a number code in punk culture of anti-fascism, not like Task Force 141 in Call of Duty. People keep asking me that, which is why I brought that tidbit up. But the Doll Squad is an entirely trans organization based in Oregon, and the core identity is of trans enforcement, anti-fascism, that sort of stuff, with several leftist and Marxist beliefs. Ideologically opposed to American conservatives, and the belief that the entire entity of the United States of America is fascist. To extend that further, I strongly believe that them believing that would mean anyone who supports or believes in the Constitution of the United States is an enemy. But the entire manpower and core of this sort of structure are trans individuals. Platoon size element, I'd say they're about 24 or larger, and they have heavy emphasis in small arms tactics, training, and standardization of equipment and TTPs. They are armed uniformly in multicam. Their IFF identifiers are either trans flags or the anarcho-queer flag, which is the black flag with the pink diagonal element. Modern plate carriers with rifle-resistant plates, modern AR-15s with modern high-grade optics, suppressors, night vision capabilities, Gen 3 night vision, both in monocular and binocular form, which is incredibly top-tier equipment. And they're also uniformly armed with 9mm blocks and high-quality retention holsters.
So how are they getting the money for this shit?
My own guess is that they are self-equipped and self-funded, but they would put a high priority towards spending towards this particular stuff. Unlike the constitutional militia model of having a stopgap set of equipment and then later on transitioning over to your good equipment, or having a 510 program of having like 5 or 10 Palmetto State Armory or Bushmaster AR-15s that don't really have anything to it. They put huge emphasis on individual equipment and familiarity with that equipment. And if you look at, say, T-Rex Arms or other stuff like Dirty Civilian, where sure, it might sound like a lot of money as the price of a used car, but for the price of one, you can get an entire set of like NFA registered short barrel rifle, suppressor, high quality optics, laser boxes, night vision, plate carriers with high quality lightweight armor, that sort of stuff.
So they just outfit themselves, individual selves, not the group.
As far as I'm aware, that's what it is.
Okay. So if anybody who joins that's poor, sorry, you're shit out of luck.
Yeah, I do see like less equipped individuals in a French documentary by the La Parisienne, where they would have just like almost nothing except for like just a shotgun and a pistol. But then again, if you want to show off in posture, why not show off the best, right?
Yeah. Kind of bougie, if you ask me, but then again, these guys are hypocrites.
Yeah, and
my-
as far as the French documentary, the group commander goes by the alias of Mia, and it's the one with the pink hair or the pink wig.
Right here. This.
Yes, that'd be the identified group commander.
Okay. How long is this? 10 minutes. Okay.
So
Okay, that's the flag you were talking about. Gotcha.
right. So security guy Ron, do you have any questions so far on either this group or anyone before that so far?
No. Let's see. We already covered that. Red Rifle Collective. Okay. Let me zoom in.
Right. This particular group was one of the offshoots of the Miami Socialist Rifle Association, where they would post this huge response on why they dismissed themselves from the SRA, split from the SRA. And as far as I'm aware, the San Diego SRA chapter and National claimed that they're too radical, or the organization was hijacked by the American Communist Party, while Red Rifle Collective claims that they're not radical enough and also were withholding resources even though they paid their dues and funding towards National.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Okay, let's close that one. Here's another. Oh, that's their main website.
That's their main website, and
okay.
And it seems to be like very like loosely put together. It's like slapped together with Wix or something.
Okay. Last time I designed actual web pages was with a program called Hot Metal Pro 3, HTML3. That's ancient. Oh God.
All right, so we can want me to go forward to another independent organization.
Hang on. Yeah. Let's see. That's
Okay.
the Doll Squad. This I saw the gear list.
We can
yeah,
go to
let's
that.
talk about this.
Okay, because I'm still haven't been finished with like talking about a few other groups.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Where's my mouse?
Let's go talk about Arm Your Friends.
Oh boy.
Okay, Arm Your Friends.
Yeah, that was one of the videos I sent to you too, Ron.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to show the video, but yeah, I came across that group when I was looking today also. And from what I know, this group identifies as BIPOC, so bisexual people of color.
Yeah, it was like Black and Indigenous people of color.
They also seem like at least half of them are trans and gay too.
Right. I mean, the commander, he goes by the alias of Flight Risk. He that is not the video featuring that particular group.
Okay.
It was like I forgot where, unless I
inside a leftist gun group. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Yeah.
Copy link. Yeah. Sorry, folks. There's a lot of info here.
And it's amazing how out in the open a lot of these groups are with bringing in the press to videotape them.
Right. For most of these organizations, the press that would be allowed to film them or feature them would either be foreign press. So like say either state press or foreign independent, like journalistic entities, or be if the entity is American, would have like a good track record of not say being like a crypto-Nazi or like part of the leftist movement or so, or put them in a positive light consistently. So Arm Your Friends, the group commander goes by an alias called Flight Risk. They operate over in Houston, Texas. A leftist group with an emphasis on the image of non-white members.
And that is the commander right there. Just point that out.
That is the commander.
Okay. This guy?
Yes. He calls himself Flight Risk. He has a patch on his plate carrier that says "Be gay, do crime," which is quite, which is either as alarming as that it's funny. and then in the video he would claim they'd go and dox these right-wing hate groups, whatever those mean, and their members, and a super heavy emphasis on firearms and gear selection. But instead of, say, Doll Squad, where they do a hard focus on standardization and trying to operate in their particular area of operation, they do it mainly for, like, how you say, consumerism. Like, it looks good for Instagram, or it follows the latest trends.
Oh, there it is. Be gay, do crime.
Otherwise, they don't have too much more in this particular group. However, for their political ideology, they think that is like extremely racist enemy for, like, say, someone driving down the road with a with a Punisher skull in the back of like a beat up truck, which is I think is like dumb stuff you find at any gun show or so, but nothing like, say, a swastika or the Black Sun.
Yeah, he calls it a right-wing extremist sticker. It's not. It's a 3%. Actually.
And a lot of them is like, what is the line to be drawn, and what is or isn't considered an enemy to these people? I can't tell. But otherwise, I don't have too much about them. Another individual I would take a little detour into talking about would be In-Range TV. Now, it's not a political organization or like a group or anything like that. It's a different category of gun tuber. The main figurehead behind it would be Carl Crosada, and he claims to not be political, yet most of his recent content is political. If you look at Blue Sky and everything, it's entirely political, and he got pissed off at Twitter or X for political reasons ever since Musk bought the company. He was a priest in either the Satanic Church or the Temple of Satan, got kicked from the church for the reasons exactly are unknown, but probably for him being too annoying and pedantic. And he would go after other firearms media figureheads for having different political beliefs than him, and then antagonizing them. So, like, Brass Facts like, Carl would post in the Brass Facts comment section of, "Oh, you got to say trans rights. If you don't, you're a bigot," and then Brass would just ignore it.
He used to have really good content too, but
yeah, that was 2019 and earlier.
Yeah, when he would cover historical stuff about different uprisings and stuff, you could kind of see it was a leftist leaning type stuff, because it was about, hey, these oppressed people were fighting, the local authorities or the local rich person and stuff. That was like a huge theme in his historical videos.
Yeah, and the former co-host was Ian McCollum of Forgotten Weapons, but afterwards, anyone he would try and work with, he would then like attack and lash out against them. So Ian, Polar Tactical, Vades Delica, which is a Finnish surplus store, and then he's been going after other people as of lately. So Grand Thumb, Lucas Botkin, Polar Nerd Tactical, Micah Mayfield, who was the camera operator for the Grand Thumb channel.
You said was Mike is no longer with them, with Grand Thumb? Yeah,
there's a huge can of worms with Grand Thumb, but that is so far off topic, I'll not cover it.
Okay.
But Carl would just lash out against these like firearms media personalities for not agreeing with him, or them making a joke that he doesn't like or something.
Okay. Since like January, I've been like off out in left field, just kind of going, not even knowing what the fuck's going on lately. It's just talking with you and Security Guy. That's how I kind of stay on topic of some shit. So,
but basically, anyone who does not share the same political beliefs as him, he would lash out against them.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of, so then his current co-host is Russell Fagan of KE Arms. He's a competition shooter in the Arizona area. We'll put that as a little cliff note for now. We'll get to that later when we talk about weapons and armaments.
Okay.
But as for Carl, he would be the figurehead behind the Two-Way for All movement, which he claims that the Second Amendment is for everyone, yet he would give definitions of what everyone is. So is it the citizens? Is it non-prohibited possessors of firearms that can pass a 4473? Is it all people? There's no clear definition. He would like change between the two videos he would make about that particular that particular topic. No, it's not the one with the foul. That's mine.
No. This is the in-range
Yes.
TV guy. There's also a channel 2A for all. Is that?
Yeah, that one came up very recently. But it seems like you're like stereotypical like modern liberal, but doesn't view firearms as like an entirely spooky thing, and actually is willing to touch one. But that's unrelated to Carl and in-range TV as a whole.
Okay.
But with 2A for all, like you would pray in his video, would praise the SRA and other individuals such as Queer Armorer, a Tactical Girlfriend, even though those individuals are oftentimes post deranged comments on the internet, basically wanting to destroy Nazis and fascists, which is literally anyone else. That typical usual spiel.
Tactical Girlfriend. Is she?
And
sorry, not to get off topic. Is she the e-thought that's always going to the range?
That doesn't narrow it down.
Yeah, it's
she's that
like
tranny that
the one that
was
has
posting about,
the one that has the OnlyFans.
I don't go on OnlyFans. She's always wearing a black mask. It looks like she's a goth girl.
The thing is, the people, like, when the thing is, like, on like K and stuff like that, people would post it as a meme, and then I'm like, geez, that's disgusting.
Well, there's a chick that goes on YouTube, Moogie Chan. She was on
that is a genuine woman, but her husband or so, like, they would end up like trying to like dress in the same exact outfit so that would play a game. Yeah, which so that way in certain videos be like, wait, is this individual the same as the other one, just to screw as a viewer?
Yeah, no, Flandre was a regular poster on 4chan's weapons board, and he had a lot of good tech tips back then, but now that 4chan's no more, so
actually it's back. 4chan's back. It's
4chan's back. Wow. Okay.
but yeah, like, that's how it came up to me about people like spamming their stuff on the board, and that was disgusting. But anyways, like, another thing, but that's not related to Carl himself, but these individuals and organizations would have many sorts of like be against 2A for all, or like label people that are not them as fascist or Nazis that should be disarmed and shot, that sort of stuff, which is like the whole substance behind that sort of phrase or movement is just entirely toxic. The inside of it is bad once you peel back beyond a very small surface level.
Okay.
One other note, like on several comments, like on the YouTube, on like his channel or on forums and stuff, that of calling him a cuck, are derived from the involvement of a woman named Sarah Black, or Sarah Noir, who is a polyamorous woman. And there has been speculation that when in-range TV was taking Patreon money, but the quality of the content was not improving, or the production quality was becoming quite bad or being stagnant, that there is speculation that she has been like having the funds be diverted to her.
Okay. Just trying to find that data.
But that's the context about why there's so many comments about like insulting Carl specifically as that.
Carl from
Carl Crosada of in-range TV, the figurehead. This man.
Okay.
But just him being politically hostile to everyone, and then supporting some deranged people that would want to disarm and shoot others. It doesn't have 2A for all is just an empty and hollow message. For another independent organization or group, A Better Way 2A, they claim they're not political, but just like Carl, they have several left leanings, a huge emphasis on trans and gay identity, where it almost is like the entire identity behind the organization. But when you try and like criticize, say, the Socialist Rifle Association, they would come to their defense. And a lot of the merchandise and stuff that would be sold under for them would have like the Neo Pride flag, like the rainbow flag with the brown, black, pink, blink,
like
pink.
right
Yeah, that element. But beyond that, I don't have too much to say about a Better Way 2A. But these are, but in general, like Doll Squad, Arm Your Friends, Inrange TV, Better Way 2A, these are separate organizations. They don't belong to the SRA or the John Brown Gun Club or Antifa or anything like that.
At least not openly.
So let's go and talk about the fun stuff, the stuff that goes bang, weapons and equipment. So you can go up to that Reddit post now of the...
This one.
Yes, that one.
Okay. And I went to the link and I downloaded it. Actually,
yeah, after 7 published revisions.
This one 2 months ago. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, that would be the latest version of this.
Okay, let's make this bigger. Okay, standardized lefty LARP kit.
All right, so the weapon selection of these members of these groups are similar to that of any American, where each firearm is purchased simply a limitation of economic spending or priority, or local knowledge in what sort of attachments are good or bad or whatever, and local restrictions such as assault weapons bans in their own areas. However, due to the association and symbology of communism and the Warsaw Pact, many members would have a preference for weapons manufactured in nations that have a history of communism, like such as Yugoslavia, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Russia, China. Like one notable example of like individuals would be that one individual that firebombed and shot up a Tesla dealership over in Salem, Oregon, using a suppressed Slovakian-made 9mm SBR. But then other designs such as, say, AKM rifles, SKSs, Tokarevs, CZ-75s, they would have a preference over that. There is a proliferation of leftist individuals in the 3D printed gun space where frames, receivers, or whole firearms are 3D printed. And while 3D printed firearms kits used to be cheap in the United States, now they cost more than the commercially produced counterparts. Now, there are several reasons why. One would be political symbology. Like how Luigi Mangione used a 3D printed gun, just because it has more of a weight of an underground people's weapon than that of a mass-produced commercial object. Or that if you're in a certain assault weapons ban, you could just get yourself to frame and not have to deal with the hoops and everything to go get a AR-15 low receiver or so. Or for political symbology. Another notable firearm would be the What Would Stoner Do rifle, or KP-15, which is featured on the KE Arms website, which is a lightweight polymer low receiver group, the KE Arms.
KE Arms.
That one. And then WWSD. The retro looking image. And click on that. So a notable firearm that is like becoming quite popular would be the What Would Stoner Do rifle, or KP-15, which is a lightweight AR-15 carbine with a core low receiver, being a monolithic low receiver. So on a standard AR-15, you have your receiver, your pistol grip, your telescoping tube, your telescopic buttstock, those sorts of components. This combines everything to a single polymer part. Okay. Which is lighter than a standard carbine low receiver. On top of that, it has a carbon fiber handguard and a pencil barrel with the emphasis of a lightweight rifle with the ability to mount bore attachments and optics. KE Arms, like through promotion of InRange TV, as well as on, say, subreddits like SRA, liberal gun owners and stuff, and even having coupons like 2A for all. This sort of stuff would end up being attractive. Also, it's not a heavy 10-pound AR-15. If that makes
10
sense.
pounds heavy?
Yeah,
for these people.
Yeah, like girlfriend was complaining that a AR-15 carbine with a aluminum drop-in handguard, like a 2-piece carbine handguard, was too heavy and millennial FUD crap or something like that.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so like that rifle with a fully loaded magazine with the attachments, I think would go about 7.5 pounds max. Like in this maybe not in this configuration, but with a red dot sight and that'd be it.
It's just like, I'm sorry, but when I was in Boy Scouts, the actual Boy Scouts in my troop were learning how to shoot a M1 Garand because the head scoutmaster was an old Korean War vet. Okay,
And that seems a lot
and
of fun.
yeah. But for the merit badge, the Boy Scouts used the Ruger 1022s, because that was what was called for back then. But now you can't even use a BB gun, a Red Ryder BB gun. I don't know. It's just
Right, but compared to like say a Daniel Defense or a Geisley rifle or BCM, which if you equip it with optics and everything else would go about 8.5 to 10 pounds fully loaded and equipped. What would Stoner do rifle equipped with a red dot or red dot magnifier would go around 7.5 at the heaviest. But like say like Tactical Girlfriend would praise this because it's light, but also complaining that the quad railed AR-15 carbine is too heavy. So go figure. Let's go back into the little like Reddit PowerPoint.
Can I point
video.
out something first on this rifle?
what? Yeah, which one?
I want to mention that there's a huge amount of plastic in that rifle. And, it is weapons grade and all that stuff. But rifles on that do not perform well in combat. The Germans found that out in Afghanistan with the G36. For just a few rounds, short combat, they worked just fine. But when they got into sustained firefights, they found that those polymers, regardless of how well it tested, they heated up, they started to get a little bit liquid, and then you had the problems of parts working themselves out. With the G36, they actually had problems with the barrels shooting out the rifles.
Now, one set of commentary I do have on polymer firearms is that they can be engineered quite well if the core design is good. On the AR-15, not exactly. Well, these rifles do hold up to very, very high round counts in competition and work well even in hot and dry environments. There is a video by an Appeal to Heaven, or either Appeal to Heaven or Meyer Flyer, that had these be featured in very cold environments. So either in like Maine or Vermont or over in Washington, I forgot where exactly, but very cold environments. And from more than one example, having cracks above, like between the buttstock and the pistol grip, where the where the buffer detent and trigger pack would be. Another thing is that if the core design is good, for example, the Steyr AUG or the Sturmgewehr 77 in Austrian use or an Australian use or an Irish use, due to everything being developed around the materials, it creates a very robust design. But with the AR-15 being a much older design from the 50s, and through numerous attempts of it having to be polymerized, like with Colt back in the 60s, it has led to failure, specifically in cold weather performance.
So we can only hope that a lot of these idiots have rifles like this.
One thing is that that rifle also does not feature a forward assist, and that's a deliberate design choice. And the rationale behind it is if you want to like push the bolt forward into battery, you'll just put your thumb directly on the bolt and push the bolt forward. However, on a direct impingement AR-15, that gets really hot.
Oh god!
And if you have designs, and if you have, say, like an excessively dirty rifle, which does happen in dusty and sandy environments, or bad magazines, just having the force going forward by the recoil spring in the buffer tube, oftentimes is not sufficient. And trying to grab the bolt with a very hot rifle, unless you have gloves on, you'll burn your hand. And it's a lot more difficult to do so than using a forward assist.
Oh, nope, I wanted. There we go.
I mean,
we all know what happens to performance in cold weather.
At short strokes.
Yep.
So, lesson there, boys and girls, for battlefield pickups: take the ammo, maybe some of the internal parts, and leave those things on the ground.
Now, if there's like a decent optic, Take
Well,
it
yeah,
out there.
take that off it, but I wouldn't
I mean-
give it to my people.
Yeah.
I'd say like these rifles are indeed more reliable than your bottom tier AR-15 builds out there. Just at the designs themselves, it just seems kind of like the concessions offered is just too expensive and too ridiculous to me. They handle very high round counts quite well, but at the same time, what high quality AR-15 doesn't?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Reddit, that Reddit PDF or
Let's
document
see.
to the left.
Nope.
To the left, right.
There we go.
No, right. One more. You already have the tab
Oh,
open.
okay.
So there's been a push to like where people keep buying these like, cheap American AKs that would fail head spacing after 2,000 rounds, but cheap optics that won't zero on the rifle, and oftentimes these designs and rifles and stuff like that and being more expensive than a lower cost AR-15. So this guy was putting emphasis on standardization to an AR-15 and a compact concealable 9mm handgun.
PSA is excellent choice. Upper kit. PSA, no accessories, fixed sights. Gee, it sounds like they've been listening to some of the chats on Patriot pages.
Well, they do admit they infiltrate our groups.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like the rifle like they attempted to use over in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Minus the California grip.
Yeah, same optic. I think the same forend.
Yeah. Rifle cleaning kit, 2-point sling, 6 Freedom Week mags. Yeah, that's essential. That's your bare bones kit.
Mm-hmm. And when with this sort of rifles and stuff like that, like a lot of it is just the same sort of like self-equipped, self-purchased equipment and firearms that are more or less the same as this in the same sort of pool as what any other American can acquire.
Mm. Now that High Point's on the scene making ARs, it's going to be interesting.
Now, what would probably make more sense is what they don't use, because you've seen like other groups use multicam, like Doll Squad and Land and Liberty. They would use multicam. Other groups would use OD Green. Other groups would use Black Bloc as their kind of uniform.
Where is it up here? Yeah, here it is. Black Bloc. Black
so
Cargo
the idea with Black Bloc is you have an entire like mass of people dressed identically, so it's hard to single one person out. So, like, if you try and describe to the police, like, hey, someone broke into a business and they were wearing a black hoodie with a black mask, black cargo pants, and black boots, and you have 150 other people doing the same exact thing and wearing the same exact thing, then how can you single out that individual?
Right.
What's probably easier to explain is what they won't use. With a huge preference of communist weapons, and there's also arguments over whether or not people like Glocks or not, or oftentimes a CZ would be purchased as a first pistol for these folks, due to the aversion of Glocks being Austrian and Austria having the association with a certain failed painter. Or it's very unlikely you'll see them use stuff like a Walther P1 or Gewehr 98 or Israeli-made weaponry like a Tavor.
Yeah. Now, let's see. Is that mentioned in this?
No, but a lot of them are drawn towards symbology, like how, like that one individual in the John Brown of Madison, Wisconsin John Brown Gun Club with the AK, the red beret, that one. Go right.
Yeah, there he is. That one.
Yeah, because it's not like in the documentary by in one of the tabs by the Catalonian state press. They're like, this person would actually like go to the range, have a crappy red dot sight mounted on a rail, and then take the red dot sight off because it cannot be zeroed or cannot be zeroable. And that particular rifle is an American Century Vishka rifle, which is known to have severe durability and quality control problems, but is one of the cheapest AKs you can buy in this country.
Wow. That's pretty sad when That's cheaper than a Wasser 10.
Wasser 10s these days are considered the premium AK now.
What?
They work. Yeah, they work.
Good Lord.
Yeah, they're now like at minimum $900 at most markets.
Holy shit.
So
I
now
remember you could get those for like $4.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
In a base configuration, those I think are 900 or so.
Holy shit. And is that a bubble pack radio? Oh god.
It doesn't even look like a Battlefield. It looks like one of those Walmart walkie-talkies.
Yeah, bubble pack.
Oh yeah. But with this sort of symbology of them preferring, like, say, a very crappy AK, or like if they choose to buy like a nice SKS or like Mosin and Gonster starting to become like 500-600 now. Like there's often a version, like they try and push themselves to like or push others to buy like an AR-15, even though that would be the capitalistic pig dog weapon. It was but with this association with symbology, with them having a very strong anti-Israel bias and a strong bias against Nazis, you wouldn't see one of them deliberately choose like a Kar 98.
Yeah.
Or a Tavor, or like a Jericho pistol, or something like that.
Yeah. To me, the Tavors are just overpriced for what they do. So
You can
it looks like there's like a
grand
it's a
you can find them for a
railed,
grand new. They're good.
What's that?
Yeah, you can find them for $1,000 now, and for $1,000 for a competent 5.56 rifle. I think that's pretty good.
Okay. Now it looks like the dust cover has a built-in rail. What?
I think so. Like
Oh
the more
God.
competent dust cover rails are like $200 or so. I doubt that's it.
Oh, geez. If any, now, Bucky, correct me if I'm wrong. If you're going to use an optic, even a red dot, make sure if you have an AK, make sure it has the side rail. And Midwest Industries makes those. Rubsky mentioned this.
UT makes them as well. There's some some rifles that don't have that. There's a retrofit design. We can actually use the AK trigger pin holes as a foundation for a side rail adapter.
Okay.
Or they're like competent, high quality dust cover rails from like Texas Weapons Systems, Fab Defense. But most of these cheap ones are not one of those.
Okay.
As far as for uniforms and camouflages that are not to be used, more easily to say what they don't want to use would be stuff that is associated with anti-communism or associated as kind of like the standard camouflage of a constitutional militia. So like M81 Woodland, Rhodesian brushstroke for its association with anti-communism, Flecktarn for association with neo-Nazi groups like Atomwaffen, and obviously like World War II German camo.
Okay. So in other words, that's the old adage, multi-cam is fed camo. Kind of.
Yeah, you can buy a bunch of it real inexpensively, but at the same time, anyone can.
Yeah. So.
And that's more or less it for what I have to present. Okay. As far as for what to do for actually go ask these questions.
Okay. Anybody have any anybody in the chat have any questions? Let's see. Uman. Not necessarily, Uman. Maybe. Oh, I don't know. It's
like there's like certain brands of products, like any product in general, are known for reputation or either good or poor quality. And if you have a bunch of people armed with like very bottom barrel stuff that doesn't even work, that's less of concern than say, like someone who has a competent rifle with that can last in terrible conditions and be aimed quite accurately and be used for things like suppressive fire and squad maneuvers competently, especially with added capabilities like suppressors and night vision and stuff.
So, anybody else?
From your research, Bucky, do you got a general idea of how common these groups are? You know, they're spread across the U.S. I know we can guess that places like New York and California have larger percentages and larger groups. But what about, across the Midwest and Southeast US? How common are SRA and stuff like that? Their units.
I'd say as common as any other American city. I mean, like you have John Brown Gun Club, SRA, Redneck Revolt being originally based in Kansas. You have Arm Your Friends being based out of Houston, Texas. You have the Land and Liberty being based out of Phoenix, Arizona, which have a more conservative slant than, say, San Francisco or LA or so, or Miami having the Red Rifle Collective. So it's like it's one of those things where it's not just, oh, they only exist in New York City, but I'm in my own area in West Virginia. I mean, especially if you have, like, say, Redneck Revolt trying to influence, say, rural Americans over in Tennessee or in Georgia or in West Virginia or so. They should not be underestimated.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be another reason why they're buying multicameras to blend in with law enforcement, maybe. Because apparently law enforcement, they like their multicam, unfortunately. Now, my local sheriff's department, they use Ranger Green for their tactical gear. Local police, they are all black. So, Bucky,
And it
your
looks like
thoughts?
most of these groups are basically squad to platoon size elements.
Or more often they are, or it's just that I haven't, like, as far as for any sort of political attacks so far, like any sort of just showing up armed at a protest or counter protest, a lot of them show up in mass, a platoon size element. But as far as for offensive actions, so far, it seems to be like lone wolf attacks, except for, like, say, maybe the disease cult or so, which I haven't gotten into researching.
Okay. Now, a lot of us out there are used to the scenes from Portland. Now, Portland and West Coast Antifa, they are very large in numbers, correct?
As far as I'm aware, yes. I mean, if you look at, say, response and action against U.S. Marshals in Portland, certainly.
Okay. Because I remember, Kaz, back in 2020, Black Lives Matter was going to have a protest in this one little podunk town that a English teacher of the local high school wanted to set off. And they had these dipshits were bussed in, and they fucked around, found out, but yeah, it was it was a very small group that got bussed in from Cincinnati area that tried to cause problems in a small town. And quite frankly, there was a lot of bikers that were fully armed, kitted out, and the local militia just told the patriots in there, it says, do not fire, make sure you are not loaded, but if things do turn out bad, then go ahead, rack a mag. But
looking at the comments section, it seems like there's questions about external funding beyond self-equipping.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm aware, possibly, but it's something I cannot definitively put a yes or no answer on, because everything else I posted, these have, like, either information published by themselves, published by a journalist, or other piece of information found.
And they're not likely to release their logistics and funding sources, at least not yet.
And as far as for funding, and except for figureheads or self-proclaimed leaders, the organizations themselves and how they communicate internally are incredibly opaque.
Yep, God's flannel. Oh, here's one. Shoot.
As far as for logistics, if you're looking at the Phoenix John Brown Gun Club video, which was published a fairly long time ago, some of these people are armed with, like, incredibly expensive weaponry for the time and pretty high-tech stuff for the time, and having stuff like drones, which, sure, they're more accessible and cheaper now, but back then were significantly more expensive, especially for the higher quality ones. But
Okay.
I highly suspect is that the Phoenix John Brown Gun Club at the time was under the leadership of Dave Strano, which is the top dog in the John Brown Gun Club group or the Redneck Revolt group, which is why there is a bunch of they appear to be like quite well resourced for what they are.
Let's see. Yeah, Corsair. They have to, like any revolutionary, like any communist group, they always have some financiers. I mean, it goes back to say, oh God, what was it? The early 1920s. You had the uh, socialists and the communists getting funding by millionaires and billionaires to hold their rallies and so on and so forth. And this is the part that I want to kind of stress to somebody who's catching the stream later on. If you look at the socialism and communism, if you have groups like, Bernie Sanders is a classic example. I'm a democratic socialist. I'm a socialist. Okay. But if you look at socialism, they're trying to, quote unquote, tax the rich and give to the poor. But yet Bernie Sanders is a multi-billion, well, no one's a billionaire, but a multi-millionaire. Okay. So he's willing to get taxed? Huh. No, I don't think so. He is going to tax you. Look at any socialist or communist society that has ever happened in the world. What happened? It devolved into utter chaos. Security guy, if you want to.
I got a feeling these groups, just from what I've seen, they put most of their funding into their equipment. They don't really consider logistics. It's possible that they think they're going to supply themselves off their kills, but it's also possible that they believe that they will get the outside support, especially from elements within government. So maybe that's what they're counting on as their logistical hub. Because I haven't seen anything from what I've watched on any videos and that stuff where they talk about homesteading or putting food up or extra ammunition or reloading supplies. Everything goes into their weapons and their gear, and that's it.
Kind of reminds me of that one episode of Doomsday Preppers. The one guy that said, I'm going to be a lone wolf was actually a convicted pedophile. And after the episode aired, what happened? He got rolled up by the cops because guess what? He was using firearms on the camera.
But I thought felons could have firearms. That's what Felons Inc. says.
Yeah. But
I'm just waiting for him to get rolled up again for having firearms.
Yeah, although one thing to not underestimate or understate is that they are attempting to standardize themselves to at least a minimum level of equipment, and ideally have a very high level of equipment, and coordinate themselves with squad tactics, and that's what's like bounty maneuvers, squad maneuvers, night maneuvers, this sort of stuff, which is quite a strong offensive capability. I mean, another thing that isn't related to these groups, but to individuals, like in lone wolf attacks, like on the Tesla dealership, where witnesses and security guards were not able to hear gunshots because a silenced 9mm was used.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. They got a lot of sympathizers.
Hey, pull up this comment from Travis there that he just posted.
Travis. Oh. Logistics planners. So basically rating people and places. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep. In other words, if you have to leave, poison the wells. So, okay. Any other comments, questions out there and the listeners? Okay. Let's see, remove that. Stop screen. I want to bring up something. Let's see. Share screen. Oh, come on. Nope, that's not it.
What I would do is I would go and like do screen caps of my sources and archive links to my sources, and then I'll share the main document. But I don't want to do it now until I have archive sources created.
Oh shoot, where's
just
it
in case someone manages to catch a stream, freaks out, and then like a post or website is now dead.
Yeah, some of those links that you had, Bucky, I had to go around to catch them again. Let's see. Share screen. Oh, come on. Where's it at? Here we go. The old Communist Manifesto. Oops. Shoot. Where's it at?
Go full screen.
There it is. And bear with me. Trying to bring it up. Is that page 23? Yes. Or 26, excuse me. All right. I want to point something out to people. If you haven't read it, I had to read this for one of my classes. It was an ethics class. Some dipshit was a Marxist. And to be honest, the best contribution to society that Karl Marx ever did was the day he died. He was a drunkard. He basically lived off of the handouts from somebody who was rich, but yet his family was had money. But anyways, page 26. Certain things. These matters not, of course, by different counties. Nevertheless, in most advanced country, the following will be pretty generally applicable. This is for the communist revolution. I'll leave that up. I dropped my notes, damn it. Let's see, heavy progressive on graduated income tax. Gee, what political group is always pushing for a heavy progressive graduated income tax? But it always for other people, but not them who are rather rich. Confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. They can always change that to just about anybody. And we saw that during the Soviet and Chinese Revolution. Extension of factories. Let's see. One thing, I didn't write this down. They considered people who weren't, who were, oh God, what was the word? They were the non-workers, the
petit bourgeois.
No, I think it was. Yeah, they considered that professionals, landowners, and of course the military. They did not work. Well, yeah, they do work. They protect the homeland. So, anyways, free education for all. Okay, let's move on to page 52. Page 52. Where's page 52? Okay. Religion. Here we go. Number 23. This is the tenets of communism. What will be the attitude to existing religions? All religions so far have been the expression of historical stages of development of individual peoples or groups, or of peoples. But communism is the stage of historical development which makes all existing religions superfluous and brings out their disappearance. In other words, they're going to make religion disappear.
Like with the John Brown Gun Club, they try and write out John Brown's evangelical religiousness as his motivation.
And here's something: how do communists differ from socialists? We have reactionary, and let me go down to democratic. Here we go. Bernie Sanders' favorite listing of himself: a democratic socialist. Finally, the third category consists of democratic socialists who favor some of the main measures of the communist advocates, as described in question 18, not as part of the transition to communism, however, but as measures which they believe will be sufficient to abolish the misery and evils of present-day society. Yeah, right? These democratic socialists are either proletarians who are not yet sufficiently clear about the conditions of the liberation of their class, or they are representatives of the petty bourgeoisie, a class which, prior to the achievement of democracy and the socialist measures to which it gives rise, it has many interests in common with the proletariat. It follows that in moments of action, the communists will have to come with an understanding with these democratic socialists and in general to follow as far as possible a common policy with them, provided that these socialists do not enter into the service of the ruling bourgeoisie and attack the communists. It is clear that this form of cooperation and action does not exclude the discussion of differences. Basically, anybody who's a democratic socialist, they're a communist light. Would you guys agree?
Right.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Let's see, page 56. The reason I bring this up, folks, where's my mouse? 56. The reason I bring this up is, not everybody has actually read this all the way through. Let's see. Now, of course, Karl Marx is German, and he always talked about communism in Germany and how it is the German communism that is the proper and the most correct. Gee, security guy, have we heard this line before?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have.
Yeah, with a certain generation. I'm
Yeah.
not going to mention. Let's see, university. Oh, where is it at? This is privacy, mortgages. Where's it at? There's here. Steamships post. All civil servants shall receive the same salary. The only exception that civil servants have. Okay. Right of inheritance be curtailed. Where's that at? Oh, shoot. I wrote down the wrong page. Damn it. Basically, there's a thing in here. Here it is, number 10. A state bank whose paper issues are legal tender shall replace all private banks. In other words, a centralized banking system. And gee, what have we had since 1913? The Federal Reserve. A state or government bank. Instead of the U.S. Treasury, it is a bank. Private bank. So.
And they're going to digital currencies because, like we see in China even now, if you do not have the proper credit score, as they call it, they can turn off your bank with digital currency. So you lose the abilities to stay alive.
One thing going back into the this whole report on armed groups, the best thing I'd say is just to keep tabs on them, identify what their leadership is, what their capabilities are, and where they're at, and develop countermeasures. Also, don't underestimate their ability to have influence in, say, the press or social media.
Yeah, as somebody who used to work in the press, or actually I worked in the media, there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of people who are very left-leaning that work in media, if you haven't noticed since 2015. The TV stations where I'm at, the hosts, or not the hosts, but the anchors that you see at the desk, they if they don't show it on camera, their posts on Facebook, Instagram, X will show how far they lean, or their followers or family members that they are connected to, how far they lean, because it's sad that it's Operation Mockingbird. You have pretty much a government operated media propaganda arm.
Yeah, and a lot of it is like, I guess they would just want to portray themselves as a competent and diplomatic force, but at the same time, they're very selective on what they would say and who they engage with. I mean, like in the focus trip stream, where you have 2 people show up without, I'd say, approval from the chapter, and then they present themselves as incredibly incompetent, and then as a result of that, they get kicked from the group.
Mm-hmm.
But then a lot of the stuff I'd see on the subreddit responses to it is like, oh, don't engage with the crypto Nazis, they'll make you look stupid. Even though those things that were asked were just simply questions.
Yeah, it's how they responded that, or they present themselves, are stupid.
So we have to look at it from an intelligence standpoint, like a how you say, a soft and cultural influence standpoint, and also the arms and defense sort of standpoint, and pay attention to what their capabilities are in all 3 and what you or your own organizations are in all 3. And the best thing to do is just keep tabs on, identify what their leaders are and how they operate.
Okay. Sorry. Anything else out there in the peanut gallery? Oops. Cancel. Let's hide this. Oh shoot, where's it?
Because like there's all this reporting on, say, like David Strano and him being outed as like a sex pest, or all these other groups and stuff like that. If people like who are on the fence or like somehow got sucked into like an organization, they realize this sort of stuff, or this stuff is being more and more prolific as in the information, that keeps those entities from obtaining power and influence.
Okay.
Ron, is there any way you can play that training film I asked you to download?
Yes.
Because this is, for everyone to know, this is a U.S. government training film from 60 years ago, explaining how communists take over a country. And you will notice a lot of parallels to what we've gone through over the last, say, 10 to 20 years.
Hang on, let me find it. Here it is.
Divide the people. Split them into quarreling factions, fighting among themselves rather than their common enemy. This is the comrades' first rule for the conquest of any country. For well do they know from long experience that the nation so divided and weakened can be easily conquered from within.
The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare that their ends can only be attained by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions.
The most powerful enemy can be conquered only by exerting the utmost effort and by thoroughly, carefully, attentively, and skillfully taking advantage of even the smallest rift, of every antagonism of interest among the various groups or types within the various countries.
With phase 1, that of dividing the population, completed, the revolutionists were ready to move into phase 2 of the communist blueprint for takeover. Create the appearance of popular support. In every country now part of the Red Slave Empire, the actual number of Communist Party members at the time of takeover has been less than 1% of the total population. As Lenin phrased it,
communism must be built with non-communist hands.
By cleverly beguiling thousands of well-intentioned people into unwittingly supporting the revolutionary program, the dedicated 1% can trick the 99% into surrendering their birthright.
I will pause it right here. The book Rules for Radicals talks about these tenets.
This they do by hiding the true communist objectives behind appealing slogans and pretended humanitarian goals. As Stalin explained,
the revolutionary accepts reform in order to use it as a cover for his illegal work.
after the communists have found some issue or point of difference upon which they can divide the people, get them fighting among themselves rather than their common enemy, the next step is to create the appearance of popular support for the communists' war of national liberation. They have been devastatingly successful thus far. Yet in one country after another, there have been alert, informed individuals who saw the signs, recognized the patterns of conquest, and raised their voices to warn the people. Against just such a contingency, the communists developed the third phase of their blueprint for world domination: neutralize the opposition.
We can and must write in a language which sows among the masses hate, revulsion, and scorn toward those who disagree with us.
A Communist Party directive issued in 1943 reads,
Members and front organizations must continually embarrass, discredit, and degrade our critics. When obstructionists become too irritating, label them as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic. Constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell.
Exactly. And what have we seen the last almost 10 years?
The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind.
We
Just
can
like-
definitely say that phase one for sure started under Obama, because we've talked about this before. Before Obama got in office, racism wasn't the thing anymore. It's something that you made jokes about. Yeah, there may be like one racist person you know, but they're the person everyone laughed at. But when Obama got in office, it all became about race, 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 race. And then, like we've seen with the steps, they just keep building.
Moving on.
the next step in the communist strategy is the most easily recognized, for it consists of the tactic of getting masses into motion, and thus precipitating mob violence. Master psychologists that they are, the communists know that once the masses are in the streets, it's not too difficult to convert an orderly demonstration into a full-scale riot. They know, too, that when rioting occurs, police and military forces of the government must move to restore law and order, and thus they have the first visible signs of revolution.
Can we pause there?
Yep, hang on.
Riots.
Back to
And
that.
I think we can say they tried that phase in 2020, but they weren't able to make it successful. So they know they've gotten up to that level. They will try again. And we're starting to see that now, where they're trying to stoke up violence and stuff like this stuff with Carmelo Anthony down in Texas. It's pretty clear cut. It was a thug that murdered a kid, but they're trying to play it up that he's the victim because of his skin color. They're trying to cause the violence like 2020 to happen again.
Yeah. But then again, if it was truly being pushed, you'd see Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton down there stoking the flames. But you don't see it because there's no money in it for them. And two, they know the kid's guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt. And they don't want to be associated with this kid because, quite frankly, the dad could still sue for wrongful death for all that money this thug has gotten. And if Sharpton and Jackson get their hands in on it, they could be considered a co-accessory to that.
But we should be aware that they weren't successful with this case, at least not yet.
Right.
They're just waiting for that next one to happen to try to capitalize on it. And then they'll say, see, this is just like the racism that happened against Anthony. They'll still end up trying to tie him in later.
Yeah. All right.
Of revolution.
Riots, demonstrations, street battles, detachments of a revolutionary army. Such are the stages in the development of the popular uprising.
The official constitution and program of the Communist Party stated in 1921,
the Communist Party will educate and organize the working masses for mass strikes and mass demonstrations. It is through struggles that the working masses are prepared for the final conflict for power. As these strikes grow in number and intensity, they acquire political character through unavoidable collision and open combat with the capitalistic state. Mass action culminates in insurrection and civil war.
In 1964, a communist document taken from the Viet Cong stated,
get the people out into the streets. Quarrels should be provoked. Youth groups are to be armed with knives and clubs, allegedly to protect themselves in a manufactured tension.
In China, as in all countries, the communist appeal was aimed primarily at students, young, idealistic intellectuals, most of whom came from wealthy families who could afford to send them to school.
Ah, just like here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It was from this group that the young communist recruits came who later provided the leadership and backbone for the armed conflict to follow. In Cuba, leftist-oriented students were the vanguard of the organized street demonstrations. Once the masses were in motion, that tenuous line between demonstration and riot, between nonviolence and violence, was easily obliterated. As law enforcement officers sought to restore order, police brutality became the cry of the insurgents. The invariable charges of police brutality were hurled as efforts were made to maintain law and order.
Let me pause this a second. Now, if you notice, whenever the communists were rioting, it's always the police were being brutal. The police are being brutal. But in Jan 6, it was the other way around. The rioters were brutal, but yet, how many people died? At least 4. Were they? Who were they? They were the protesters. One, Ashley Babbitt, and several others. The so-called police that were attacked. No, they didn't. The one Capitol Police officer, he didn't die until like 2 days afterwards, and the rest died weeks after from supposedly suicide, not from the actual event.
When marches and demonstrations turn into riots in any country slated for takeover, the communists are then ready to implement the final stage of their blueprint for conquest. It takes only a handful of armed opportunists, criminals and savages to create the semblance of revolution.
Only insurrection can guarantee the victory of the revolution. The purpose of insurrection must be not only the complete destruction or removal of all local authorities and the replacement by new, but also the expulsion of the landlords and the seizure of their lands.
And so it has been, with but minor variations in one country after another. Divide the people. Create the appearance of popular support. Neutralize the opposition. Precipitate mob violence. Create the semblance of a revolution. An accurate summary of Lenin's strategy for the conquest of the world is as follows.
First, we will take Eastern Europe. Next, the masses of Asia. Then we shall encircle the last bastion of capitalism, the United States of America. We will not have to attack. It will fall like overripe fruit into our hands.
Okay, guess that's it.
Or at least that's the clip I could find so far. I'll look to see if I can find the full video yet in the archives.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's...
SBC was SBC8's comments over there. One thing interesting is that Susan Rosenberg, who is the vice president of the chair at Thousand Currents, a parent organization to the Black Lives Matter organization, She was one of the terrorists that actually set up IEDs in the 70s, as part of the one of the communist movements. Either something that related to a date or the Weather Underground.
I believe the Weather Underground set off a bomb in the Capitol building. It was a cloakroom that exploded, and yet it's been pretty much washed from the pages of history, because I never learned about that in my American government class when I was in high school. And that was an era where, it was during the Cold War. The Soviet Union hadn't fell yet. So, of course, anything communist we would talk about. But God forbid, Weather Underground, anything communist here, it was very played down.
Yeah, they didn't talk about it much in the schools. They just talked about what happened in other countries, and it was real cursory even about that.
Yeah.
And she had a lengthy prison sentence, but she got pardoned by Bill Clinton.
So,
and here we are right now.
Yeah. So somebody mentioned what was it? SPC8. Managed by the media. Let's see. No, that.
Well, yeah, because it's perception, public perception. Yeah. So.
Okay, here he is. So far, we're at phase 3 already. I don't know. I still say we're still in phase 1.
They're beyond that.
Okay.
We're beyond stage 1.
Okay.
I think we're at the point where they've built it up enough. They have enough of a base that they are trying to reignite the mob violence, the protests and that stuff. And then they can claim victimhood, which is something, whether you like him or not, I personally don't. Alex Jones has been saying he thinks that the next thing we're going to see is false flags against protests for the illegals that are being deported.
Yep.
And that would fit into that stage.
Yep. He's been saying that since November. Yeah.
Since the election, he thought that's going to be their next thing. So.
Yeah. But that, he's been saying the false flag. First it was at the inauguration, but it was moved inside. And now he switched over to the false flag against the illegal aliens, or the ICE. Because if there's like a bunch, he was saying, I'm listening to episodes back in January. I'm that far behind.
What he's been expecting is we will see massive demonstrations in the larger cities here soon, because we're in warmer weather. School lets out here in the end of May, early June, so we got about a little over a month. Then we'll start seeing those college students getting on the streets. We'll see the protests, mass protesting against the deportations. And then at some of these events, we'll see shootings or IEDs going off. Mm-hmm. And then they'll say, oh, it's the right-wing militias that are doing it, or the National Socialists, the neo-Nazi kids doing it. And then they'll use that as pretext for, blaming the government, blaming militias, and then you'll see it spiral out of control from there.
I mean, like, some of these groups out there are specifically formed, or at least have the appearance as a hard counter to, like, say, any militias out there, whether it be a constitutional militia or otherwise, like Land and Liberty, or American Iron Front, which has that sort of the same sort of appearance and motifs as these these non-constitutional jingoist groups that are in America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oops. Mike Shelby's Triangle of the 4 Phases of Revolutions. That's a new one to me. Yeah, me neither. I'm trying to Google it. Triangle refers to. Let's see. Hold on. Let's see. Share screen. Window. There we go. Share. What help if I zoom in?
Looks like there's a nice little picture.
Yeah.
Probably pull up a bunch of them on images.
Anatomy of Revolution. Oh, it's a document. Kate Rogers. Oh, guess not. Close that. Show more. Triangle, 4 Phases of Revolutions. We've invited Kate Britain in this. Crane Britain. The Old Order. Pre-revolution will be moderate regime, radical regime, Thermian reaction. This is the final phase where revolutionary fervor begins to wane. Radicals are often repressed, and the pendulum swings back towards moderate government. The revolution may not achieve all its original goals, but society may return to semblance to normalcy, often through with lasting change. Right now, that's kind of like the pendulum swinging back.
There's been a few weird things going on that I didn't put in my notes, but one example would be in 2020. Remember NFAC?
Yes,
like Grand, and then over in
Grandmaster Vijay and his stuff,
right?
Yeah.
Like
he started talking big at the end before he got busted. He said in an interview he had a meeting with someone that said they were willing to finance the NFAC. They were going to get a land to build a camp on, and they were going to start training their members, and their members were going to get paid.
One thing that
right
was
after that happened is when he came up on federal charges, not related to that. It was to other stuff.
Very, very, very weird coincidence that happened was over in Kentucky. Customs and Border Patrol seized a incoming shipment of Chinese origin, like AR-15 lower parts kits, buffer tubes, stocks, that sort of stuff, in very, very, very large quantities.
Yeah. Now here's something, and I was talking with John, the Prepared Mind, several years ago, that acquaintance of mine works Border Patrol, and they seized like a container, shipping container full of munitions. This is like 2013-ish, something like that. So. Yes, Lance Corporal Veteran. I'm trying to find it, so give me a moment.
I just sent you the link to the Customs and Border Patrol website about this report.
Copy a link.
And this happened at the same time period as the NFAC rallies.
Okay, let me pull it up. Hang on, 1 second. Give me a moment. 10,800. Wow.
I remember us talking about that on Livestream back then.
Yeah. Let's see that picture. Trying to find what was all in there. Arriving from Shenzhen.
Well, we were asking back then too, what were these parts kits, but we never found the information.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to know. What's these parts kits? Were they lower receivers? Were they?
I mean, on AliExpress, you can buy the individual pins, trigger packs, and stuff like that from China. So that is a pretty strong possibility.
What was that?
Oh, that on AliExpress or Temu or Wish or so, like AR-15 like trigger packs, springs, and pins can be found from there. Same with butt stock, same with tubes, those sorts of parts. Being able to finish a lower receiver.
Right, but at the same time, if that stuff is legal, you can go to any sporting goods store that sells parts. You can buy those parts straight off the shelf, no problem. But if it's like parts that would turn a semi-auto into a selective fire weapon, yeah, then that would warrant seizure, or
Right.
even the actual lower receiver itself.
Right. As far as what is confirmed to be the specific things, I don't know.
Yeah, they never released it. I heard some stuff saying that, oh well, it was just hand guards and pistol grips, but no, that's didn't seem right.
Yeah. So, okay. So far, that's all I got. Let's see. Communism is cancer. Yes, it is, kid. Yes, it is.
Someone asked a question about would a war with Iran cause stuff to spark off here in the U.S. I don't think so. I really don't, because we've seen what's been going on with the Israeli government and the Palestinians. That hasn't exactly caused anything to kick off here.
If anything, it'd probably be like, say, an invasion of Taiwan or a major like Pacific flashpoint,
that I could see.
and that would create like huge opportunity for hybrid warfare, fifth gen warfare, gray zone warfare, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the smoking gun would be if one of these groups and one of its members are caught with like a, I don't know, like a Norenko Type 97 or something.
Yeah. Front towards enemy. Any more news on that truckload of 18,000 rounds of 7.62 being hauled by two Mexican guys?
Word is it was stopped in Colorado. It was going to Pueblo. Pueblo is south of Fort Carson. And I watched a video today where someone who used to be stationed at Carson with 10th Special Forces, he said that Pueblo, it was well known to the SF at Carson as a major hub for the cartels. So he was figuring that ammo was going to the cartels. The only question is why? And we don't have that information yet.
Cartels are embedded that far north?
They're everywhere.
I mean, not related to the Mexican cartels, but you ever seen like what's going on with that New Mexican judge where like he was the judge, and then his daughter was like a huge gun influencer on Instagram that was actually being hired as a consultant for Call of Duty, and then posing with this with like a rifle, like in all these like questionably useful attachments, with active gang members being harbored in the residence.
Wow.
Yeah, I heard about that one. Yeah, they busted another one, I think, in what was it, Wisconsin? Supposedly was involved with Tren de Aragua.
See, nightclub bus found 2 miniguns. The ammunition on one and oof. Wow.
Yeah, I heard about the nightclub bust in Colorado Springs. That one I heard about. That was just a few days ago.
Yeah. I heard about the bus, but not what they, not all that they found. I just heard they just rounded up illegals. Boom, done. Okay, moving on. So, okay. Alrighty, kind of a slow night. Not as many people watched or tuned in. Let's see. What?
Well, it is Tuesday. You know, it's kind of be expected. So.
Yeah. So, all right. Let's. I don't know about you guys. Want to shut her down?
Yeah, I got everything, all my notes out. One thing I will do, I will revise my notes, archive all the links, and then I'll give this to you guys, and you can disseminate it to whoever you choose to.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send you the bookmarks, Bucky, that so you can kind of find out which ones were not working for you. I got them to work.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's that. Security guy, you got anything?
Not that I can think of. It's Someone did ask the question on, does it look like China's going to be the one starting the communist revolutions instead of Russia this time around? Yes, I think so. And I think the reason the Chinese are somewhat supporting the communists and socialists and Maoists and Marxists and, the leftist idiots, we'll just say that.
Yeah.
The reason they're supporting them is they're just another front to draw attention away from whatever China's planning on doing. Whether it's invasion of Taiwan or going to war against India, whatever. If they cause unrest here in the United States with their proxies, that draws off a lot of U.S. troops and equipment that would be going to fight them. Russia's, they're not into communism anymore. It's not a thing in Russia. Yeah, there's communist clubs, but they're so small that don't really count for nothing anymore.
Yeah. And they've turning Christian again.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, it's like in Poland. Poland, my my great grandfather went back to Poland right after the war. This is in the 50s to find his brother, because when the Nazis invaded Poland, that was the last he heard from his brother, my great uncle. And he wore a good suit, and the small town in Poland where my great grandfather came from, they thought he was Gestapo or the NKD, because they went through what the Nazis did to Poland, and then what Stalin did to Poland under occupation by Soviet forces. So, I heard both what flavors of socialism did, so it's not good, folks.
It's not something we want to be under, regardless of the flavor.
Right. I mean, what was it? Argentina? Well, not Argentina, but Venezuela. They were full representative republic until they started voting in the socialists, and then the socialists decided, oh, we need communism. That's a good idea. Wrong.
They went from being one of the richest countries in South America to now one of the poorest.
Mm-hmm. And where's all the money going that they get from the oil? Definitely not to the people. And another history lesson. Right after the Red Revolution in Russia, after the Tsar was killed and V.I. Lenin fully took power, what did he do to all the revolutionaries that helped him obtain power?
Shot him.
Exactly. Same
thing
as
what happened with the people that helped Hitler get the power.
Yep, the brown shirts.
He got rid of the SA, and the SA was primarily World War I veterans.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. It's just like we're watching history repeat itself over again. So, I don't know. I just don't know. I'm to the age where I can't do the stuff like I used to, but at the same time, all I can do is watch this train wreck happen in slow motion. What do you guys think?
I still think these sorts of Marxist armed groups should not be underestimated, and tabs should be kept on them, on their capabilities, their numbers, their locations, and their commanders, and develop countermeasures to that, both in arms as well as the social influence aspect.
Yeah.
Well, we agree with that, Bucky. It's just they're not as big of a threat as, say, during the Cold War, but they are still a threat.
Yeah.
And as for what we can do, it's like we keep saying, stock food to the rafters, work on those gardens, because when shit does kick off, regardless of who starts it, why, what happens, you need to be able to feed yourself and your family
Yep.
and any other friends that end up coming to your place.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can stack all the bullets you want, but you can only eat a bullet once. So, all right. With that, any
No, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. I'm still releasing content. Pretty useful stuff.
Yeah, definitely a lot more than I am.
Well, you got a valid reason for it. You're going for a higher level degree, so
Yeah. Yeah, definitely being a medic is, or working in healthcare, it's a lot of schooling. And for anybody that's into the preparedness community, definitely have at least one medic or medical professional that's in your team. And I'm not talking a nursing aide, somebody that is an EMT or higher level of understanding.
Well, are you saying a candy striper doesn't count anymore?
Well, they don't know medication dosages, ranges, different kinds of meds, how to start an IV. Candy stripers don't do that. Candy stripers are basically nursing aides.
I thought you were supposed to just apply the tourniquet around the neck and feed them both painkillers and antidepressants at once.
Well, if you're putting the tourniquet around the neck, you don't need to waste the meds on that. Trust me.
And
All
you
right.
know, anyone that's watching this who's with Socialist Rifle Association or one of the other groups, recommendations for equipment for you. The Mosin Nagant is the best battle rifle you can get. It's killed more fascists than the M16. And for a sidearm, we really recommend the Sig Sauer P320. They're on the market super cheap, and you can get all kinds of magazines for them. Go ahead, get one. And we really recommend appendix carry so that you can draw that weapon as fast as you can.
Can't argue with that.
And,
Yep.
if you're special operations for, Socialist Rifle Association, those Keltec sub 2000s and 9mm, best choice you can make. You can do long range shots, close range shots. It's the perfect firearm for you guys. Forget those other weapons like, your Krinkovs and all that type of stuff. Forget that,
Yeah. All right, guys, let's close her out. Everybody have a good night.
It's been a
thank you,
pleasure.
Bucky, for coming on, for giving us the deep dive. Granted, it was a Tuesday night, not too many people here, but hopefully later people can tune in. And because, dude, that was eye-opening, because I had no idea some of these people until you sent me that information. So hopefully we can do this again and probably go a little deeper on who these people are, or even more people that, or more groups, I should say, that you find.
Well, I'm sure as summer goes along, we're going to see more coming out of the woodwork.
Oh, unfortunately.
And one thing I think, Bucky, I think you and I should both post this live stream over to our channels so that this information is spread out to more people. So
yeah, I posted it as a it's called like a YouTube post, as well as putting it into the live streams that I'm involved in. And with it being the SRA or these Marxist groups, it seems like this one and the Focus Trip ones like mesh together quite well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Also, steel armor. It's multi-hit capable, and it is inexpensive.
I mean, it's considerably lighter than Kevlar. And it's a lot cheaper too. So yeah, steel helmets, especially the ones from like Bulgaria and Romania, those seem to be the best. That's definitely the route you really want to go for in the socialist resistance.
Yeah. Or especially the Ukrainian ones. Those, yeah, definitely those.
You can buy those on eBay. They just fresh from the battlefield too. May have a hole in it. May be in a custom fit to someone else's skull, but still good enough.
Yeah.
And as someone pointed out in a chat, first aid supplies from China, just as good or better than anything you can get in the United States. So definitely equip your IFACs with those Chinese tourniquets and, you know, bandages and everything.
Oh yeah. Also, tampons and women's sanitary pads are excellent for anti-bleeding.
Oh yeah. Okay, we're gonna end it here. So good night, everybody. Prep like your lives depend on it, because they do. Good night, everybody.
It's all over, but the cry, and nobody's crying but me.
Scream went